All right, well, let's jump right in. Out from the lab, a couple of studies. So first of all, let's talk edibles. I'm actually going to take a little bit of a break here. I think I'll just enjoy something. Oh, maybe I'll put this away and enjoy it later. Um, Keep us on track. But he published a study looking at edibles, right? So
Yeah.
cannabis, retail cannabis edibles, and I think there's a couple of bylines overall in the study. One is that Canadians are not as Canna-curious. But to me, it read like they're not Canna-curious because they're kind of past curiosity. They're like, okay, this is a
Yeah.
product. What is it? $2.6 billion, probably another $2.6 billion to three still in the black market. But what did you learn? We've been talking about cannabis for a while as part of the food area and part of the food network. What did you learn from the study, and did anything jump out at you?
Well, I mean, the Canna-curious term was coined by my colleague Brian Sterling, who's done a phenomenal job with this study. He's the principal investigator of this study. He basically looked at the data. He's a cannabis expert. I'm more into edibles specifically, but what he's done was amazing because for the first time we were able to compare data from Canada with data from the US and see exactly what's going on. Frankly, what I wanted to know is whether or not legalizing cannabis federally here in Canada made any difference, really. And we could use the American market as a benchmark. And what we found out was really the American market is booming, booming. It's incredible. The market in Canada is worth probably $3 billion retail, which is okay. But it's nowhere near what Deloitte was saying a few years ago. Deloitte was claiming that the cannabis sector would be worth billions and billions of dollars. We're not there at all. And I
Well,
think,
is that a matter of timing? So I remember Stats Cannabis, which was the fun Stats Can
yes.
initiative to try to scope the market, said it's about 5 billion plus or minus. And so are you defining there between the legal market and the illegal market? Do you not think the market is that 5 billion? Because right now we're at 2.6, which is a
The,
year
the the
plus
the
into it.
illicit market is much larger than the legal market right now, especially when it comes to edibles. And what we've seen in the United States, because
Hmm.
in some states, I mean, cannabis has been legal for quite some time now,
But yeah, yeah.
and over time, you see a conversion of people consuming cannabis, the dry version, and they get into edibles because the human body was not designed to inhale drugs. Ingesting drugs is much better for you. And so there is that transition that does occur, but there is a market for edibles in the United States, and there are supplies for edibles, not in Canada, because
Well,
there are a
it's
lot of regulations.
yeah. I was just going to say it's a regulatory difference. Now, interestingly,
Don't forget, Michael, here in Canada, edibles are a drug. If you look at the Cannabis Act, it is considered a drug, not a food product, which is not the case in the United States.
well, the other difference in the United States, and there's many, right? So probably beyond the scope of this particular episode, it is federally legal in Canada, where it still is only legal by state in the
Yeah.
U.S. And New York State. The big news in the retail cannabis sector is New York State
Oh,
going
yeah.
legal.
And
That's
Connecticut,
huge.
just on Friday, I believe they announced that they were going legal as well.
That's right. And
Yeah.
Illinois is earlier in the year. So, California had been the big market in the U.S. for cannabis. I've been to many stores in both California and in Las Vegas where it's legal, but off the strip, it's all kind of quirky. So it's going to be big. I mean, I think New York is going to just probably surpass, I would bet, California. The problem in California, and it's a problem here too, is the municipalities can opt out, and many hundreds
That's
of
right.
municipalities have opted out in California. They're coming back on stream. I mean, in Ontario, 70 plus municipalities don't allow retail cannabis stores.
That's right.
So that's a bit of a governor, unfortunately, for probably not the best reasons, because it brings jobs and taxes. It's when I think of edibles, lots of innovation in the category, but it's the 10 milligram limit that seems to come out, and it came out a bit in the study, that is a
Yep.
constraint on the growth. Yeah, would you
Yeah,
would you agree?
absolutely. Absolutely. It is limiting. I think everything that's going on in Canada was by design by Health Canada. I think that's what they wanted. That's what the agency
Slow and
wanted.
steady, right?
The last
Slow
thing
and
they
steady.
wanted was a 5-year-old kid eating a chocolate bar infused with cannabis accidentally ends up in the hospital. They didn't they didn't want that. They didn't get it either. And so people are not as kind of curious as Brian Sterling would say, but they're not enthused either. We're slowly normalizing the presence of cannabis in our market, which is nice, which is good. But I think there's so much potential. I mean, in the U.S., right now they're hiring a lot of people. Last year alone, the cannabis sector hired over 70,000 people. So we're almost at 400,000 people in that sector, and they're aiming for $100 billion in sales by 2030. Those
Wow.
numbers are
Wow.
incredible compared to what we're
Wow.
seeing in Canada. So it makes you wonder: did we actually legalize cannabis again, or did we just decriminalize it? I mean, I
Well,
think there is a discussion going on right now.
mhm. Well, I think in the fullness of time, right? I mean, we went through some chop earlier on in legalization from a retail perspective because we should divide our discussions around the people who produce the product and the people who sell the product. So I know more about the selling of, and in certain provinces like Ontario, they wrote a textbook on how not to launch a retail sector, basically, but are coming on
That's right.
right. Hey, it's a lottery. It's this. It's that. It was just a.
Yeah.
It was just a fiasco of
Yeah.
regulatory barriers. Now that's passed though. Now Ontario is. We've opened up in Ontario. I'm in Toronto. 600 stores during a
Yeah.
pandemic. I mean, it is. I think you've only started to see it. So if I was to be asked that question, and the constraints on the product distribution put on by the provinces, and to some degree the regulatory framework, the slow and steady regulatory framework. I think in the fullness of time, listen, as you said, we didn't have young kids accidentally having too much cannabis because they got a hold of chocolate, because even if they got a hold of it, it's not that powerful. So I think
That's right.
walk, run, sprint. In the fullness of time, it may turn out quite well. Whether Canada takes its rightful place as one of the first in the world to legalize nationally, whether we produce the best, was there an export opportunity? Yes. Did we squander it? Maybe. These are some really interesting questions beyond
Yeah, I think so.
consumer
Yeah, and I, I
acceptance.
think I think I mean there was a bubble that burst a couple of years ago. We saw a lot of layoffs, and I think there was. I mean, the sector was overcapitalized. Let's face it,
The
because
production
demand was.
sector was, yeah, the
Oh,
production sector was, yeah.
absolutely. I mean, there was so much investment, and so that burst, and I think it was needed. And I think the industry is looking at a great future. I think a future of growth. So the
Mm,
sector will be growing, but I think if I would be looking at the U.S. market. I mean, most players in Canada are looking at the U.S. market very aggressively,
yeah.
looking at what's going on right now, and we are expecting more states to legalize cannabis recreationally.
Well, and one of those Couche-Tard is in partnership with Fire and Flower, and there, of course,
Yeah,
the opportunity is to get into convenience stores and get broader distribution. And no, I think that's the growth. There's a ton of growth there. I mean, and the best part is generally the study also talked about some net new consumers to the category, but a lot of this is just shifting from the dark to the light.
that's right.
Creating jobs, creating tax dollars, creating a lot of good things. So anyway, all upside in many many ways. So
Yeah,
exciting to see.
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
and I would say I'm actually doing a presentation in London, England, virtually, unfortunately, next week, and it's a retail
Oh,
transformation conference. And
okay.
I said I want to present on retail cannabis because
Oh,
the most interesting innovation in in-store retail right now, much of it is happening in cannabis stores. Like if you want to see innovation and determination, they're selling, yeah, not exactly, but they all sell more or less the same product. That's
right.
becoming less true. Did If you want to see store innovation, man, go to do a tour of cannabis stores, and you can see it. So I'll be doing a presentation about that because I think that sets a high watermark for all retail in terms of how they
Interesting.
innovate. Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah,
I'm really looking forward to it.
that's an interesting perspective. I've never thought of that, but as you were talking, it makes sense. Absolutely. Yeah, it
Well,
is a new sector, really. So it allows itself to think outside the box a little bit.
You
Yeah.
know, I'll give you one little example, and we could talk about it later in other episodes. But one of my this brand called Superette, and when you walk in the store, there's two colored baskets, shopping baskets, a red basket and a blue basket. And if you pick up the red basket, you're cool. I know what I'm doing. I don't need you to approach me. If you pick up the blue basket, come see me. I want to learn more. So it's just a little thing, but it's a fun
Oh my
innovation, right?
God.
It's a fun innovation, right? I
I
think they,
would
they
pick
kind of,
up that red basket all the time.
well,
That's a neat idea.
right?
It's low tech.
Simple,
Yeah.
easy peasy, simple, but just
Yeah.
really creative, right? Like really fun, really creative. Anyway, so if you look for fun and creative, lots of examples in retail, but the cannabis retailers are doing a fantastic job.